Hey, everybody, welcome back. I'm Susan Lindner, your host of the Innovation Storyteller Show. And today we are taking a walk into the beautiful and exciting world of financial services, of compliance, of guidance, of governance, of all things that we are beginning to understand about the intersection of Web 1, 2, and 3 with where life is going in the future and how this impacts our growth strategies, our product design. We are moving into a new space of how we're talking about technology and its intersection with the rest of us. And that's why I'm so glad to have Aviad Stein, the Global Head of Innovation and Corporate Strategy at Broadridge. And Aviad is a seasoned business executive with a proven track record of developing and implementing innovative growth strategies, product offerings, and new business development in financial services and e-commerce and other tech-related industries. He is a former Bloomberger, can we call you that? A former Dunham Bradstreeter, who has demonstrated success leading teams in the ideation, identification, incubation, scaling of new products and business opportunities here and abroad. Most importantly, I think this focus on really understanding the consumer and doing that inside of a corporation where we can learn how to use innovation labs, incubators, accelerators, all of the tools that are at our disposal as innovators to really find a new way of meeting our customers' needs. And that's really what we're all about. Today's conversation is also going to focus on the stories that we tell to get these innovative ideas flowing inside of an organization just like yours. So let's dive into it. Aviad, thank you so much for joining me today. I'm really looking forward to this conversation.
Thank you for having me, Susan. I've been looking forward to being on your podcast and kind of share my experiences with the audience.
So let's dive right in. So how did you get into this space? Because I'm sure as a little boy, when you're thinking about being, a firefighter, a policeman, or what was yours, Aviad? What was your desire as a little boy?
I don't think I had one. I think that's probably okay why I ended up in innovation.
So you just kind of thought yourself into an innovation role as opposed to dreaming of this as a little boy.
Yes, I think, one of the main reasons why I think I ended up, whether it's, by a plan or not in innovation, was kind of correlated to where I was born and raised, which is in Israel. I was part of a very startup-y environment to begin with. A country that has led a lot of innovation and disruption across different industries and brought a lot of new technologies, services, solutions, and products to the world as a whole. And I think being part of that environment gave me, I think, a lot of tools and a lot of inspiration for what I will be able to do in the future. At what capacity, where, and how, that was the unknown. But I always knew, okay, that I want to be in a position where I can think through innovation and I can think through the lens of the customer and how can I do things better for that customer.
And it's interesting because I think your background kind of speaks to this milieu of coming from a place like Israel. I know, having spoken at Microsoft and Google in Israel and, just being in that community, the country itself is a startup, right? I mean, it came together with founders, not very much unlike our country here in the United States, but came together with founders with a dedicated idea of growing this place, of providing a stable home, but also having giant dreams, right? Giant dreams of being a global player from day one, of setting the tone of what could be absolutely different about government, about peace, about fending off competitors, if we can call them, for lack of a maybe a softer term than what some others might call your neighbors around you, and really understanding what it is the dogfight to stay alive on a day-to-day basis, right? That is the part of the history of Israel that then creates this crucible for entrepreneurs where many of whom come directly from the military into starting something new. whether you have a military-based technology or not, right? I mean, you come from this, I'm already in the fight, and now I'm going to start a startup.
That is correct. I mean, I 100% agree with you. I think being part of a culture that always think through the lens of survivalness and thinking through the lens of what can we do in order to accelerate our growth as a society, as a country? What can we do to better our people? What can we do to shape up the perception of us as a country? I think pushes a lot of people to think outside of the box, right? The reality is, and there are numerous examples of that, right, of very well-known startups that were extremely successful coming from Israel. Take Waze as an example, right? Before Waze or any type of navigation system in the past, right, what did we used to do? We used to look at maps, right? We used to drive in our cars, okay, with giant maps and start looking into how can we, or even MapQuest, right? How can we actually get from point one to point B? Well, guess what? In Israel, which is a very, very difficult environment, right, to navigate, okay, when you're sitting in traffic, right, and people are driving in a very aggressive manner, there was an idea. How can we actually keep the eyes of drivers on the road while giving them all the information that they need, right, at the right time? Real-time information. And so this is just one example where you were forced to think outside of the box. And, when I look at my background, I came here about 17 years ago without any idea that I'm going to be leading innovation in large corporations and advising to startups. I never imagined, okay, that I'm going to be on the podcast with you today. But I always knew that I will find a way to find the best place for me to contribute and truly influence, right, any parts of the inner circles right around me. And so the question of how did I even get into innovation? It's actually an interesting story. I lived in the West Coast. I got my master's degree in business in Portland, Oregon, and I had an opportunity to go and work at the Oregon Health Authority. And I did not know anything about healthcare at the time, but I was tasked to kind of think through how can we create a program by which growers and individuals will be able to apply for a medical marijuana program. And I'm like, I have no idea even how to do that. But then I went to the whiteboard and I'm like, okay, what would an end user would want to do or need to do at this point in time? And then I also looked at the existing flow of how people apply for the program. And I saw so many obstacles that are preventing from that end user to do it in a seamless way. They don't really get any updates, right, of where they are in the process. And I thought through, okay, about a different process by which I can apply online. That was the first quote unquote stab I took at innovation, thinking through the lens of the end consumer, thinking about the right technology, thinking about the impact to the business, thinking about how can you create more efficiencies. And that was really just the first attempt for me here in the United States of doing something very different. And that has led me then to take on much larger tasks and initiatives. For example, coming and forming the first innovation lab at Nordstrom, right? A well-established brand that already had a very strong brand presence and loyalty, right, among their customers, but no online presence. And that was a big task, right? How to create a whole ecosystem where you connect, quote unquote, the online channels to the offline channels. And this is just one example where I kind of start accelerating the whole thought process and the ability to influence at scale. Yeah, go ahead.
But just thinking about that though is, Nordstrom is a place known for its customer service. This isn't a transactional organization. I mean, if you compare it to a Macy's, a Target, right? We go in there, we want our stuff, we want to get out. We'll get a couple of impulse buys. I heard a fascinating statistic at a conference I was at last week that asked the question, what percent, the speaker asked the question, how many of you have left an IKEA with something in your cart that you didn't come to IKEA to buy? and every hand in the place shot up, we were buying flurgs and flukens and, fervashervens or whatever. We all spoke Swedish by the time we left IKEA. It turns out that 60% of purchases at IKEA are non-anticipated purchases. 60% of their inventory is an impulse buy. Like that's amazing to me. But Nordstrom's is a very handheld customer service, white glove kind of place. And it's not a small thing to conceptualize. How do we maintain that feeling of browsing and identifying and really knowing the story of the shopper in order to make that happen? And, your transition, thinking about, okay, how do we ideate that? How do we create innovation around that? Is not a small thing. I don't want to minimize that even in the smallest bit, because that's an experience where the customer story has to be front and center all the time.
Correct. It has to be front and center. And there are other dimensions to it, right? It's the ability to connect an existing business model, which is very successful, very reputable, replicate that into a very, very different, right, type of a transactional relationship, and start connecting other pieces to it. For example, services at a store, right? How do you take a service like a fashion stylist that is working very well in the store and you replicate it into an online channel, right? Without the physical connection, right? That's a challenge by itself. How do you give the same type of experience with the same type of result to a Nordstrom shopper, right? When he's not fully engaged, right, with a fashion stylist. So those were some of the challenges that we had to kind of both face and create alternatives and solutions for. And the reality was that, we were able to not just match our clients' expectations, but also accelerate in terms of who did we start serving through those online channels. And to your point, and I know we are on a podcast that kind of talk about the storytelling. The storytelling, okay, was a big part of what we try to create, not just for the end users, but internally as well. How are we going to create a whole ecosystem that will not cannibalize, okay, our very strong business, right? How do we actually go about expanding that brand, whether it's globally or to other geographical regions, right? Without jeopardizing what we're currently doing, right, in certain regions of the country. So there are different dimensions, right, where you have to start thinking about it and drive innovation, but at the same time, quote unquote, protect the business. That's the real story. So even fast forwarding right now to my role at Broadridge as the global head of innovation, that's a big part, right, of my role, right? How do we tell the right story to our executives who've been working so hard for many decades, right, to build a sustainable, scalable, reputable business that serves over 5,000 brands across industries, for investor communications, for critical infrastructure that really powers, corporate governance and capital markets and wealth management solutions, and so forth. How do you take all of that and you think about it in the context of digital assets, of decentralized finance? That's a big, big challenge that you have to both sell internally and then be able to demonstrate that there's a real opportunity here for the expansion of the business, not necessarily for the disruption of the business.
Yeah. So let's talk about that. And I want to just add one more stop on your career path to this conversation, which is Tumblr. Tumblr. Where does that all fit into your clearly probably hits the creative bone in your body, Aviad, but tell me a little bit about that experience and what that brought to your understanding of working in innovation.
Yeah, so I got to Tumblr, okay, through some mutual connections that I have, which was very fascinating to me because I was always interested in community-based services and solutions, right? They think about the whole social network ecosystem as a whole. It's really fueled and based and influenced, right, by the community for the community. And, some of those, I would say, micro experiments around community, I've already started Nordstrom back in the day, when we create a different solution that really engaged the community of shoppers, right, and influencers. But then when I got to Tumblr, I realized, that we have a very, very solid business value among our customer base, which is around the creation and consumption of content, which is slightly different, than the traditional bohemic, right, social network like Facebook and others. And so I was fascinated, to learn more about what is it about Tumblr that people are really drawn to, to create content, share it, be influenced by it, and start building even their own brand as an extension, right, of the Tumblr platform. And I took that role over there to really just lead the growth strategy and how can we expand it globally, but also, how can we start bringing, influencers, whether it's celebrities, right, singers, actors, people who are involved in professional sports, right, to help their communities grow and express their opinions and share their opinions openly about social issues, political issues, right, and others. And so I found that to be fascinating because the reality is that it doesn't matter if you are a consumer of a social media platform, a retailer, or financial services. Guess what? You have an opinion and you want your opinion to be heard. That's the secret sauce, right, of building solutions that are match your clients' needs. And it's very straightforward when it comes to social networks. It's not as straightforward when it comes to financial services, but you start taking some of those elements of a community-based experience and fueling that right into whatever you're offering your clients, right, across those different industries.
And that community-based, this is really community members talking to each other, right? The way these communities grow is based fundamentally in storytelling and amazing user experience, right? We talk to each other about why we love it. Come see my thing here. I remember my daughter used to post all of her artwork on Tumblr, and she really began to understand her relationship to art based on talking to artists directly, the ability to share those stories. And, as we kick it up to the financial services world, Dun & Bradstreet, Bloomberg, Broadridge, like these are places where it feels like we're doing like a lot of fast moving transactions, but the underlying principle here is trust and security, right? When we're managing our money, I think there's like I don't want to romance it because we are doing billions of transactions a day, but we're asking people to hold on to the safety of our today and of our future. And it's not a small undertaking to be able to provide that service, nor is it the ability to communicate what that value is. And when you're working in innovation and you're talking about the future of stuff, we want to trust that the person who's handling our financial future gets it, but we also don't want to be terrified by every new trend and new thing, right? I remember we're in the midst of the Silicon Valley Bank destruction right now. And I remember in 1998, right, the building up of this bank and watching venture capitalists, on the West Coast in particular, say, this is our go-to bank. This is how we want every startup to bank with. And it was this sense of like, wow, there's a bank I can trust that really understands my business model. And here we are today, watching that thing implode. So handling someone's financial future is not a small thing. How do we talk about innovation, Web2, Web3, everything that we want to do, while also making people feel really comfortable with the disruption that we're talking about?
I would say that that's the biggest challenge, right? The reality is that, and I 100% agree with you, when it comes to our finances, it's not just about the credibility and the trust factor. There's a psychological element to it, right?
Huge.
We have to believe in the story that a bank, a regulator, the government, right, are telling us to build, that sense of security and safety net, that no matter what, there is someone behind, that bank, that will be able to provide us, with whatever liquidity we need, right, at the right time. And the reality is, that when thinking about right now, the digital asset ecosystem as a whole, it was formed because certain parts, right, of society, and I'm talking global society, felt that the entities who are holding our money and are regulating, the money that we have too much power.
Right.
And it's not just too much power over the money that they hold, it's power over the data that we are sharing with them. It's everything that ties back, to who we are as both individuals in society, but the role that we're playing feeding into those companies' success. And so when you think about decentralized finance as a whole, and you start thinking about Web3 and blockchain as a technology, you see, how individuals, communities across the world felt that they need to bring back that control to themselves. They want to exactly think through the lens of what am I sharing? Who am I sharing it with? For what purposes? And at what point in time I can make the decision as an individual if I want to stop sharing finances, data, right? My identity for that purpose, and so forth. And so when you start thinking about the evolution of Web 1 to Web 2 to what we call right now Web 3, which I actually believe it's more of kind of Web 2.5, because it will never be a fully decentralized ecosystem. We've seen what happened to FTX. We've seen what happened to Terra. Right now, we're seeing what happened to the Silicon Valley Bank. There's going to need to be some level of regulation, a framework by which people will still feel safe, but at the same time, enable them to be in control of both their finances and identity. And one experiment that we are right now working on, which is a fascinating one, and it's kind of it's driven by the need coming from the community, is for disclosures. What type of information, what type of data, whether it's on-chain or off-chain data, must be disclosed to an end investor, right? And we're talking specifically right now about the crypto world, right? Whether you're investing in stable coins, right, or other coins, you still want to know a lot of information so you can make the right decision. Do I feel safe? Do I feel secure enough, to invest and put my money into that coin, knowing exactly what the risk factors are and what the opportunities? That framework does not exist. So going back, to how do you solve, for the challenge, right, within a corporation, it's really about looking into the core competencies of Broadridge, for example, right, as a big player in that ecosystem today of regulation that meets the experience, that leverage and right technology, and how do you kind of bring that into a whole new ecosystem around digital assets and the disclosed information that goes with it, right? What can we do in order to expand our business to be market movers and market leaders when it comes to disclosures for digital assets? And so there's a lot of dimensions, right, that goes into thinking through the lens of the investor, how you satisfy the regulatory need, but also how do you not cannibalize or disrupt entirely the whole new decentralized ecosystem that people really want and people feel that they want to be part of.
Yeah. But so part of that is, as we're thinking about this shift, is the story that we tell the investor, right? Is the story that when we talk to our clients about how we make this move. So how are you doing it, Aviad? What's the story that you tell first to get people internally on board with your cool new innovations and ideas? How do you tell that internal story before we even get to the customer? How do you get other, sometimes conservative bankers on board?
Yeah, in the most simplistic way, I would say is really just a series of education sessions, right? So we're talking about an ecosystem that have new terminology, has new implications, right, on companies like Broadridge and others in the financial system, ecosystem as a whole, and the end investor. Starting, educating people internally in terms of what does even tokenization mean? People never heard about the term token, right?
Not outside the subway, no.
Right, so exactly, right? So you have to start teaching them, what does it even mean, right? What is the role of an exchange when it comes to digital assets? What's the role of a broker, et cetera, et cetera? So you go through, a series of educational sessions. And then you're moving more into outline exactly areas of opportunity where we can create quick wins or micro experiments that we can figure out our role, within this new ecosystem, and how we then go and talk to our clients and get them to become design partners for those ideas. I can give you one example, concrete example.
Please.
So roughly 6 months ago, we've done an analysis. We realized that the end investor who are investing in crypto holds roughly 2 to 3 wallets with digital assets, Rainbow, Coinbase, and others, Gemini, for example. The problem with that is that they're very disjointed experiences, right? Whatever you're experiencing on one wallet is going to be very different in another one. It's the flow, it's the look and feel, it's the gas fees, it's the transaction that you can or cannot do. And we figure that we might want to create an experiment by which we can consolidate and aggregate all of those wallets into one platform. Think of it of the mint, right, for digital assets, where you can view everything. So we created a series of hypotheses. We went through a research plan. We then created mock-ups. We prototyped them. We went through another session of validation. And then we figure out that there is something there. We can create an experience. And by the way, it's live today. It's called Dumpling. And we created an app by which you can start connecting different wallets, different exchanges into one platform that will allow you to both aggregate, consolidate, transact, and influence by the community of people who are on the platform as well. So people can start sharing, right, their strategies. They can start sharing their what we call custom dumplings that they've created, okay, with some substantial evidence of why they should invest in stable coins or NFTs or others. So that was an experiment. And the goal for us was both to test it in market, but also prove internally that there is a role for Broadridge to play in the space by looking into specific friction points and challenges that we can best solve for because of our market positioning, because of our technology, because of our understanding of our clients and their clients as well. We're best positioned to create a set of micro experiments that we can then bring to market.
Yeah. And those micro experiments, right? I mean, bankers are about the bottom line, right? They want to know what's working and what's not. Ultimately, we want the story. We want to make sure that everything's moving in the right direction. But at the end of the day, returns are what matter, right? So it's also creating these vehicles by which we make people feel safe and we're generating value for the customers. So as you think, like, what's been the hardest part about this, Aviad, in terms of getting other people on board inside the company with some of these ideas? I hear you say the quick wins, and kind of turning these things around, but what's been the hardest part about this sell?
I would say the hardest selling point was to demonstrate that we can create a much more B2C oriented solution than we've ever done before. As a traditional company who primarily serve businesses, and even though we have the outreach right for millions of customers that those clients have, we don't have a direct connection to those clients, right? We have our client base, which is 5,000 brands. Creating one of our first B2C experiences by itself, okay, was a big challenge for people internally to understand what the value of doing that, right? And so we start debating and exchanging ideas internally. What's going to be the best path, right, of scaling that experience once we prove that there's something there? For example, should we continue on the path of B2C, or can we offer that as a white label solution through our client base, right, to their customers, right? And that's the type of discussions and the type of, I would say, of unknowns that we face, where people kind of challenge us internally. Okay, we understand the value of what you're creating, but how is that going to help the business grow? And again, the B2C versus B2B or B2B2C discussion was one, okay, that we had to continue and hashing out and bring more proof point into which direction going to actually be better for us as a company. I can tell you right now, 6 months after when we launched, okay, that experience, we're still debating. And the reason we're still debating is it's kind of a chicken and an egg if you think about it. How can you go and offer dumpling as a white label solution to our clients if there's no real requirement or regulatory framework by which, okay, brokers today are obligated to even offer crypto as an investment? Meaning we need, okay, to have those two things work together so that our clients will both see the value of what we've created, and at the same time, we'll need a solution that, by the way, we already have in hand that they can offer to the clients. So those things that has to go together.
Yeah. And, sometimes I think a simple reminder of what the competition is doing is really helpful, because if you're not thinking about a user experience on the B2C level, you're already behind the 8 ball, right? I mean, regardless if you're selling to big businesses or not, we all want an experience that feels like our iPhone.
Right.
And so creating a sleek user experience is not a second option. Like, it's not an afterthought. It has to be primary. Okay. So I want to talk a little bit about, because this is a really good segue into what's coming next. So as we think about, those issues that you mentioned, user experience, governance, where we're heading into the future with Web3, what do you think is next up for the industry? What's happening next? And what are the stories that we are going to wind up talking about with it?
So I would say to that, in the United States, we like to be market movers. We like, okay, to really lead the world, especially when it comes, okay, to financial freedom, right? And the reality is right now that the United States is learning a lot, okay, from the rest of the world. So we're looking into what's happening right now in Canada, in the UK, in the EU as a whole, and even in Singapore when it comes, okay, to driving Web3 and crypto as a more standardized way of investing. And so between now and roughly the end of the summer of 2023, we will see regulation in the United States, okay, potentially coming into place. There are going to be parameters by which brokers will have a true guideline in terms of what they can offer their clients. They will be asked to provide a disclosure framework, right, by which investors will know exactly what they're investing in and all the data components that are required, right, to be disclosed. And at the same time, you're going to start seeing, I think, consolidation across the market of different players who are playing in the Web3 ecosystem and in the crypto world as a whole. I'll give you one example. The regulators already said that an entity, a very large player in the crypto world, okay, cannot play the role of an exchange, a broker, and a custodian altogether. They're going to have to choose one role. So we're going to start seeing consolidation across the board, the different exchanges, the brokers, okay, who will pick the role they want to play in the space. That's number one.
Okay.
Second thing, you will start seeing a framework by which investors will be able to leverage the services offered today from a financial advising perspective, from an asset management perspective, right, to start figuring out how to reallocate their portfolios, right, to add some of the crypto investments to it. The other dimension to it, which is more on the technology side, you're going to start seeing a lot of companies who are already doing that, but they're going to do it in a much more rapid way, leveraging blockchain is the main technology, right, by which you're going to start building the entire infrastructure, and they're going to start building, whether it's applications or services or solutions, right, on top of a blockchain, and they're going to leverage a lot of the data that it's out there, right, to make those decisions and figure out, okay, what role they should play within this whole new ecosystem. So there's going to be a lot of things moving forward that are going to drive that. I think it's the global, right, perspective that's going to drive a lot of the regulation here. It's the experiences, okay, they're going to be driven by the need of the customer, and it's the technology by which, okay, you'll figure out how to leverage it and for what purposes.
Yeah. I just wonder what these stories are that are going to be coming back from the customers themselves. Because it's going to take some really good explaining, to quote I Love Lucy. You got a lot of explaining to do, is really is explaining this to the customer in the way that they get it, and also makes them feel, what we talked about at the top of this conversation, safe and secure about their assets and their data.
So
Because
here's
the
the thing that I've
blockchain is,
learned.
yeah,
Yeah.
the blockchain is a big, out there ocean of information, and keeping that safe is going to be very interesting.
Here's one thing that I've learned, okay, many years ago, the term of mobile first, which I was not necessarily agreeing with. And the way that I looked at it was experience first. I think when we're looking into Web3 as a whole, it's not even going to be experience first, it's going to be value first, meaning whatever going to bring as much value to the end consumer, to companies, will drive a sense of safety and security for them as well. So you're going to have to lead with a strong value proposition by which you do need to feel safe to share your information, your data, your identity, your financials, your healthcare records, right? We didn't even talk about the
Sure didn't.
spillover, right, to different industries like healthcare, insurance, right? And so when you're going to start telling the right stories around the value that you're going to get, the control that you're going to have, and the way, okay, that companies will be able to actually serve you as the end user by leveraging the technologies, I think you'll be able, okay, to get more people to truly believe and feel that that's a seamless transition from Web 2 to what it's being called Web 3.
Yeah. Aviad, it's time now for the hot seat portion of our interview. So let me ask you this question. What is the greatest invention in human history?
That's a very interesting question. Selfishly enough, as again, being so far away from my homeland, I will say airplanes. The reality is, okay, that where you can jump on an airplane, okay, get to whatever destination you want to, whether it's an hour, 12 hours. I think it's one of the greatest invention that we're able as society, as humanity, to kind of reach, right, and bringing that globalization, okay, to become very, very small, and we can get to each other, okay, fairly quickly.
All right. Orville Wright, we've got one for you in the in the airplane invention department. If you had the opportunity to join an innovation team during human history, which team would you join?
Wow. I was always fascinated by, again, the healthcare industry. And so I would have loved to join a company that is forced and prioritize treating some of the more severe, I would say, challenges, right? Health challenges we have as a society. It could be, okay, fighting AIDS. It could be fighting cancer, and figure out ways truly, okay, not just from a treatment perspective, but everything around, okay, to make the life of people who are suffering from those type of illnesses to live the rest of their life in the most pleasant way possible.
Gotcha. So the innovation team that you would join is the team that manages not just the research, but also the caring for people with cancer.
100%.
Yeah. Okay. And then finally, what's one thing that really pisses you off, or that you just wish someone would invent a solution for?
Well, a lot of people, a lot of stuff, I think, are aggravating that hasn't been solved for yet. But I think I go back, okay, to the healthcare stuff, right? Not necessarily from a caring perspective, but more from a treatment perspective. I would have loved for humanity to figure out a way to treat the people who are unfortunately suffering, right, from different illnesses. That's something that I'm just fascinated by the fact, okay, that we as a society weren't able to solve for yet, with all the knowledge and technology, the curiosity that we have as society, not to be able, okay, to treat certain illnesses.
Yeah. Well, from your lips to the Almighty's ears, right? That we figure out how to end this. But
Yeah.
humans are an inventive bunch. We will find new ways to suffer, I'm absolutely sure.
Yeah.
But but I hope that we can find an end to this one. Aviad Stein, thank you so much for joining me on the show today. If people want to get in touch with you, what's the best way to find you?
Well, first of all, Susan, I want to thank you. That was a great pleasure, and I really enjoyed our conversation here. Loved sharing kind of my experience. People want to reach out to me. Okay, I'm obviously on LinkedIn. It's Aviad Stein, and I'm more than happy to obviously expand my network and talk to people, learn from people, and share more about my experiences.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Susan.